I don't think any reasonable person doesn't think that domestic violence, as far as men abusing women, isn't happening. It isn't very serious, and that it's something that should be taken serious. On the other end, it's sad and super troubling that no one's taking more of a point on what's happening to men. Even if the numbers aren't, like, I don't know if it's 70-30, 60-40, 90-10, like, it doesn't really matter. It would be, even if it's 90-10, it would be nice if there is a place for those men to call and for those men to go if they are experiencing, emotional or physical abuse. Like, what are you seeing in the data and the interviews that you've been doing over time?
I can tell you exactly what the numbers are because there have been 5 large sample studies done in the U.S. between 1985 and 2011. Cumulative sample of 25,000 people if you put these 5 surveys together. And they use something called the conflict tactics scale, and that measures how people respond to conflict. So they're asked, how do you resolve conflicts in your family? Conflicts happen everywhere. How do you resolve them? And start with, well, we talk about them rationally and reasonably. And they get up to, well, somebody actually pushed or grabbed somebody. That's technically abuse. And then they get up to somebody kicked or hit somebody with an object, or kicked them or hit them with a fist. And that's
Right.
severe abuse now because it could be injurious. So they all use this scale. And the big advantage with this scale is you get 16 times as much report of domestic violence as if you ask somebody, has there been a crime in your family, or has there been abuse in your family? People underreport those things because they don't think what they're doing is A, criminal, or B,
Wow.
abusive. So if you phrase it in terms of conflict tactics, much higher report. Now, you'd think the person that developed the scale, Murray Strauss at the University of New Hampshire, would have been a hero for coming up with this great new measurement instrument. Instead, he was castigated because it now uncovered violence and abuse by women. So when he got a medal at the American Sociological Association, the front 2 rows got up and walked out in protest. His doing what a good scientist does, report the data,
Right.
apart from the political thing. So anyway, with this conflict tactics scale in 5 surveys, here's what they find: that of all reports of intimate partner violence, 50% is bilateral, matched for level of severity. That is, each person is doing it to the other person and receiving it as well.
Okay.
35% is female perpetrated. There are females using more severe or using abuse when the man's not using it at all. 15% is male perpetrated. But of that 15%, or 35% if you're looking at women, only a third is the severe items on the conflict tactic scale. That is, the things that could be injurious. In other words, the pushing, shoving things are more frequent because that's what people do more commonly. They're not likely to grab a weapon on their partner. That's infrequent. So if you look at the kind of stereotype of domestic violence, you're basically talking about 5% of all reported domestic violence, which is a male using severe violence on the conflict tactic scale against a female. It's 5% of all reports. And yet the entire system has been built around that 5%.
Wow. I'm going
Yeah.
to be thinking about that for a little while after this conversation.
Yeah.
I guess a question from you: how was that data collected? I mean, like, is it from a specific country? How many people were involved? Has it been replicated? Is there anything that, I'm sure you looked into all this, I would assume.
Yeah. Well, it was collected in the United States because they do much better research than anyone else.
Right.
And there's 5 separate studies here. And they're all done by different groups. So each one's a replication of the previous one. One of them was done by the Center for Disease Control. One of them was done by the National Family Violence Survey and University of New Hampshire. They were all done by government groups, and they were all methodologically solid surveys, and they all used random digit dialing, which is the conventional method of assessment these days. Is you call people up and ask them if they're willing to take part in a survey. Sometimes money's offered for that. That's the best we can get. I think these data are pretty much unassailable. Also, there was amazing consistency from one survey to the next. The only thing that varied a little bit was the age of the respondents, because one of them was a youth survey, and so they got higher reports of violence because younger people do it more than older people. Um, but yeah, it's true. But apart from that, this 50, 35, 15 thing was minor variation, came out time after time after time. So it's really been replicated 4 times, you might say. And the sample size ran from around 5,000 to 1,500 in each one of these surveys. So they were fairly large sample. You put it all together, it's over 25,000 people.
Oh my gosh, that is pretty. That's pretty
Uh,
great data for those numbers. I mean,